From an early age, Inga was capricious and perpetually dissatisfied. She never rejoiced at gifts, finding faults in them. She didn't enjoy festivities, reproaching her mother that other girls had fancier dresses. Later, returning from the skating rink, she complained that everyone else had a good time while she fell once and then sprained her ankle. At school, she claimed the boys were brutes, and they avoided her, calling her a terrible winner. Friendships with girls didn't work out either, as she considered them all to be silly geese. Her academics didn't immediately take off either. Every day, she went to lessons as if to an execution. Standing at the blackboard, she was helpless and clumsy, while teachers scolded her for negligence. She never felt compelled to pay more attention to her studies to improve the situation. When it came time to fall in love, there seemed to be no one worthy of her attention. However, once after school, a gawky redhead named Veniamin from a parallel class followed her, sighed all the way, and then, hastily mangling words, confessed his love. Inga scornfully laughed in response. "Look at yourself." A freckly redhead met a girl with a shovel. "Get away from me, disheveled Veniamin, and don't come near me again." "Understand," she yelled angrily at the departing boy. At home, Inga cried for some reason. Her mother couldn't understand why she was so offended. The daughter muttered that no one understood her. She was angry that her parents couldn't see that their beautiful daughter deserved better, not just anyone. The best never came along, and the girl began to sneak glances at Veniamin. Upon closer inspection, she decided he wasn't so bad, even perhaps handsome, since her classmates were making eyes at him. When he felt her intense gaze and looked up, Inga would turn her nose up and turn away with a haughty air. Veniamin never dared to approach her again. Soon, he transferred to another school and disappeared from sight, causing even greater disappointment for the girl. "Well, let it be," she whispered, wiping away angry tears, "and he also said he loved her, a traitor." To explain her loneliness at a time when her classmates were going on dates, the girl focused on her studies and, surprisingly, excelled. After graduating from school, Inga met the lively and handsome Boria in college and reciprocated his courtship. The young man paid no mind to her bad moods. He could easily cheer up anyone. Being with him was fun and pleasant. Together, they would skip lectures to go to cafes, movies, or just for walks. After earning their diplomas, they got married. A year later, their son Stanislav was born. But as the years passed, the novelty of experiences faded. Everything became mundane. Inga's gloomy disposition and dissatisfaction returned. Her belief that everything was heading towards the worse only strengthened. No matter what happened around her, she saw only the bad side in every event and feared it posed a threat to her. She was sometimes not even pleased with herself, but couldn't do anything about her gloomy perception of the world. Even feeling Boris's love and care, Inga couldn't shake off the anxious thoughts that all marriages are short-lived and theirs was no exception. So, she had to be prepared for the worst. She constantly thought about this and subconsciously waited for confirmation of her fears. She treated her husband with suspicion, expecting a catch. She felt burdened by her child because of the extra trouble. She complained to her friends about how much effort and health she had put into the family and shared her premonition that her son would still grow up ungrateful and her husband would someday betray her trust. For a long time, Boris endured Inga's whims and perpetual dissatisfaction, turning everything into a joke and calming her. But one day, he broke down as if the sunshine inside him had extinguished, and his reserve of cheerfulness was depleted. Boris no longer wanted to joke and lacked the emotional strength to overcome the gloomy atmosphere at home. Noticing this, Inga realized her premonition had not deceived her. She tried to talk to her husband, but he remained silent. The offended woman decided to ignore him, stopped cooking and washing clothes for the offender. She ostentatiously ignored him, behaving as if an unwelcome stranger had taken up residence in their home. She began to manage the household separately. Now it was Boris who wanted to talk and explain everything, but his wife didn't utter a word in response. Their son noticed their silence and clumsily attempted to mend the situation, but he was unsuccessful. The boy's efforts to mediate between his parents were futile, and after a month-long standoff, the father left. Through mutual acquaintances, it later became known that the man rented a place for a while before moving in with a cheerful woman. The abandoned Inga convinced herself that she had been right all along and became even more despondent. Nothing brought her joy. The whole world seemed dark and hostile to her. She tried to reconnect with her son. He was surprised and avoided interaction, not supporting her efforts. Amidst all the events and her own experiences, the woman failed to notice how Stanislav grew into an independent young man who, in her opinion, lacked appreciation for his mother's efforts. He spent most of his time either outside the house or on the computer. In response to her remarks, he joked, "All's good, Mom, I'm on my way down." Seeing the change in her face, he rushed to comfort her, "Don't worry so much. Everything's fine. My future's secured. I won't be lost." What does that mean? She would get scared again. Nothing bad, you're just out of the loop, but your son is a simple computer genius who's already in high demand, and it's not even the finale. According to knowledgeable people, a comfortable existence awaits me as long as I have a clear mind and enough time for my favorite activity. So, better close the door quickly. Great deeds await me. You jest. Inga retorted, offended. Just like your father. After finishing school and college, Stanislav went to visit an old friend and ended up staying there. "Mom, I love you, of course. And all that. But I don't want to cause unnecessary irritation," he declared. "So, I'll live comfortably there. It's more convenient for me. We're a team. I write programs, create websites, and she designs them. We'll earn some money and get married. We'll give you grandchildren. But for now, rest from your worries and live at your pleasure." Left alone, Inga fell into depression, unprepared for such a turn of events. On one hand, it became calmer for her to be alone, but it was also hurtful and so undeserved. The woman sifted through past events in her memory, trying to understand why the two closest people to her had treated her this way. Her health deteriorated from the stress. She truly got scared when she had a hypertensive crisis, saved by the timely arrival of an ambulance. That same evening, Regina, the local therapist, came by. She checked Inga's blood pressure, administered an injection, forced her to eat, and sat beside her as she dozed off. Then they spent a long time drinking tea, and Inga unexpectedly found herself sharing her life story with the empathetic doctor. After opening up, she felt relieved, as if freed from a heavy burden. For the first time after hearing words of support and encouragement, the woman believed in them. After seeing Regina off, she fell into a blissful sleep with a smile on her face. Unexpectedly, Inga became friends with Regina, who had a calming effect on her. With her, reality didn't seem so terrible, and it felt like life could go on, sometimes even pleasantly. The doctor was a good storyteller and often shared stories of her patients or acquaintances. Listening to her was interesting and fun. But then, catching herself, Inga would start complaining about her fate and gloomy loneliness. In response, Regina suggested she look around and pay attention to some men. "Where have you seen good men?" Inga would start her familiar refrain. "Either unreliable or selfish. They just want to snatch a piece and live off others at our expense." "Don't say that," the companion retorted passionately. "Of course, there are bad men, as there are women, to be honest. But the majority of them are decent, good people. You know what? Come with me tomorrow to a place. I'm invited, but you'll be welcome there too. I'm sure you'll be surprised and change your mind." When the friends entered the gates of a country house, so many people came out to greet them that Inga was taken aback. How many of them, she wondered, but upon closer inspection, she became interested. "Is this all family?" Inga asked. "You could say that. These are the close ones of a very good person, the kindest and most selfless of anyone I know. He's the head and soul of this unusual family. Come, I'll introduce you to him." They approached a man whose thick, pale golden hair struck Inga. "Here, meet Mr. Veniamin," Regina turned to him. "And this is Mrs. Inga. I've told you about her." "Veniamin?" Inga's surprise was boundless. "Sorry," she blurted out, suddenly embarrassed. "You know each other?" Regina was delighted. "Yes, from school." The man gently held back the guest, who, in confusion, took a step back, contemplating flight. "Where are you going?" "Please stay. I'm very pleased to meet you again. It's the best birthday present I could have asked for." "Thank you, Regina." "Birthday?" Inga panicked again. "Why didn't you tell me?" She looked reproachfully at her friend. "Don't worry," Veniamin reassured her. "I asked her not to say anything. Come, I'll introduce you to my family." Inga was once again amazed at the number of household members. Now she saw they were not alike at all. Why did she immediately think of their kinship? It dawned on her. Every face bore the same genuine happy smile and an expression of love for this somewhat elderly, eccentric-looking man. During the congratulations and the performance prepared by the relatives, a joyful surprise never left the woman's face. And there was much to see. Children recited poems, played musical instruments, sang, and danced. The adults were not far behind. All of this was dedicated to one person, who enjoyed the proceedings, clapping his hands childishly and rejoicing. Never before had Inga experienced so many positive emotions and smiled so readily. She glanced at the man of the hour from time to time and now saw him in a completely different light. This man inspired her sincere admiration. When the party organizers announced a break to prepare for the next part of the program, Veniamin invited the guest for a walk. She was eager to ask the most important question. Finally, she ventured. "And where is your wife?" "That's a long story." The man chuckled. "Are you ready for it?" "Of course," the woman blurted out. "You've surprised me so much that I'm burning with curiosity." "I married hastily the first time," Veniamin began his story. "I wanted to forget you. It was a mistake. We didn't love each other. Lived together for a few years, had our first child, and then she ran away, leaving the son with me. My mother was still alive then. She helped me cope with the baby. Then I met Vera. She was older than me, raising 2 boys. The years I lived with her were the happiest for both of us and our children. She bore me another son, but soon fell ill and died. I mourn that loss to this day. Vera was a very good person. Knowing everything, she made me promise to find a suitable woman and not to delay getting married, as it would be hard to cope with 4 children alone. Indeed, it was tough, and then Tasia came along with her daughter. I didn't think long, as promised. And so our family grew. My third wife was a decent person, and we lived no worse than others. But unfortunately, she fell madly in love and left with her fiancé to another country. She planned to take Marina with her as soon as possible. But it seems that opportunity has not yet come. And I don't regret it at all. The daughter took over our household. We boys helped her with everything. Eventually, we learned to live in this setup. Then, indeed, I married again, this time, to a childless widow. I listened to her talk about how she loves my children, but I wanted complete happiness for myself and for them. But it didn't work out, and the children didn't accept her, sensing falsehood, and she didn't want to establish good relations with them. My multi-layered family burdened her. So, she left after a year, and I was even glad because she turned out to be a stranger to us. Soon after, I adopted 4 more children. It just happened that I took 2 orphans from an orphanage, 4, because they were brothers and sisters. But how could they be separated? And for us, it was neither scary nor difficult anymore. My grown children helped the foster ones settle in. And they quickly became part of our team. I realized that the larger the family, the easier it is to manage, and together, any task is within our reach. As a result, despite being single, I ended up with 4 marriages and 9 children from different mothers. And now, 11 grandchildren are growing up, plus the significant others of the older offspring. Just think about how many they are and how much joy they all bring me. Yes, I've noticed how much they love you and how happy they all are, Inga picked up. But weren't you afraid that something might go wrong with them, and that they wouldn't appreciate your efforts? Your life has had so many trials, so much work and care. How did you know it wouldn't be in vain? That everything would end up so well? I'm just an optimist, Diniaman smiled, and I'm sure that everything in our life is for the best, no matter what happens. And if you believe in something, it will definitely come true. How are you? Inga paused, searching for the word. You're extraordinary, and I regret that I couldn't see in that redhead boy such a generous, selfless person. Please forgive me. What are you talking about? I forgave you a long time ago. You were just a little unhappy girl, and I chose the wrong time to express myself. I only understood all of this much later. And I felt sorry for myself all my life for my unhappiness, and as a result, it turns out, I missed the happiness that passed by. No, not like that. I foolishly drove my happiness away. If you only knew how I cried then, not even knowing why. Now I understand that I was mourning my unfulfilled happy destiny. Well, you've decided again that everything ended badly, Diniaman smiled. But I see this situation differently. All the trials, the hardships we went through, are for the best. It's just that each of us had to go through our own path. Let's consider that it's only thanks to what we've lived through that we're now 100 times happier. Happier.